All right, bus bench babes. Sometimes renting can feel like it might be like an easier path, like no responsibility, allows so much more flexibility. But is it secretly sabotaging your long term wealth? This week on the podcast, I'm having one of our favorites, Jennifer Butcher with Go Mortgage, back, and we're going to break down what is the real cost of renting. You could be missing out on equity. There could be an emotional toll. You could just simply be feeling stuck. If you're a renter and you're sitting in this space, you are not going to want to miss this episode. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. All right, bus bench babes, I have a treat for you. I have Jen Butcher back again. We brought back one of our favorite expert lenders, and Jen is with Go Mortgage. So Jen, welcome to the show again. I'm so excited. We are going to be talking all about what renting is really costing you, and it just made sense to have you you are a total expert back to like really break this down. So Jen, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much. It's an honor to be back again. I love chatting with you. Jennifer Butcher, I'm with Go Mortgage. I have been a lender for over 24 years. I guess that ages me a little bit, but a lot of experience. And I help people finance their homes, but I always like to think of it more as like I help people build another branch of wealth for themselves. So looking out for their financial best interest, looking at their short and long-term goals, and helping them figure out how they can reach them. And obviously using real estate as one of the biggest tools to do that.
I love that. Well, when you're not doing mortgages, what are things that you do for fun?
I am also a podcast host of She Talks Money. So that's like my little side fun passion project right now. And then I have two teenagers, a 13-year-old son and 16-year-old daughter. I have a driver now. That's been super fun.
Crazy.
So we are, I'm either in a hockey rink or on a baseball field or a lacrosse field. We love spending time up at our cabin in northern Minnesota, being on the boat, anything outdoors. I love to do it. And then I'm kind of a health and fitness fanatic too. So meal prepping and all kinds of fun stuff like that.
It's so fun. You and I met, fun fact, you and I met before you and Dave were even married. So
we did.
It's been a long time. I remember when you guys were like planning your wedding and you're showing me pictures of all the things, and
yeah.
We've known each other for years. We've been in the trenches for a long time.
It's so fun to connect with people that used to be in the business in the good old days too, right?
Right?
How different it is now.
We all have the battle scars to show, and we all like, okay, we can do it. We can do it.
Yes, for sure.
Well, I'm so excited that we're going to have this conversation. Rent. There's so many people that are renters. People are renters for a whole variety of reasons, and we're going to get into that. But like many times there really is a cost to this. And so what is this really costing people? So like, let's just jump into the questions. Jen, what's something that you're seeing in today's market when it comes to renters who potentially could be buyers?
I think one of the most common things that I am hearing after having a conversation with a renter that finally takes that first step and makes that phone call to me is they say, wow, this is easier than I thought it was going to be. These numbers are better than I thought they were going to be. And I wish I would have done this a year ago. Honestly, like almost every one of them says, I wish I would have just had this conversation a year ago because there's so many misconceptions out there, right?
Yeah.
20% down being probably one of the biggest ones, or that, the parents are telling them you can't buy a house until you save that 20% down because you don't want to pay PMI. It's like the evil. And then when they realize like actually how inexpensive private mortgage insurance is compared to what it's going to cost them by waiting the 3 or 5+ years it's going to take to save that 20% down, they realize it's a no-brainer. So sometimes it's just laying out the numbers for people and helping them see, oh, this is actually possible.
I had a gal walk into an open house last weekend up in Maple Grove, and she said, I've been a renter for 11 years and I'm finally getting off the fence. And I'm like, yay! Single woman. I'm like, let's do it, girl. I'm like, come on.
Love that. Yeah, love that.
Is renting ever a smarter option? Or is it always just like a stepping stone thing? What is your opinion on that?
I do come across people. I think there are situations and phases of life where renting makes sense. So if you relocate a lot for work, for example, or you are finishing school and you know that you're possibly going to be relocating in the next couple of years, renting might make sense. If you have unstable income, so you're not quite in a stable job yet, you're jumping from job to job, or you just started a business and you need to get your feet on the ground a little bit, renting might make sense. Or if you're building your credit, right? You're not quite there yet with credit. I still always recommend people have that first conversation so that they can have a clear roadmap as to what to do with credit, because there are a lot of misconceptions with that too. And I don't want people to make mistakes and then a year later realize, oh shoot, I should have done this, this, and this instead of the things I did. So I think there are seasons where renting makes sense. But I also think it's like a mindset thing, right? So recognizing that as soon as you know that you're going to be in one spot for at least 2+ years and you have stable income, then it becomes a matter of making that financial decision to take the step to homeownership instead of being stuck in comfort zone, because that's when it starts to cost you.
That's really powerful. Okay, you touched on this a bit, but about some misconceptions. So outside of like having like a 20% down payment, what are some other misconceptions that people have about buying?
Yeah, I think the 20% down one is you can buy a house with as little as $1,000 out of pocket. So that's, you don't need 20%.
Close that one out of the water.
Let's just clear that one up. And then that you need perfect credit. And that's not true either. People think that they have to have perfect credit score. And we do plenty of home financing for people in the 500s. The higher your credit score, maybe the better the interest rate or the better the opportunity with down payment assistance programs and that type of thing. But you don't have to have perfect credit. And everybody needs to start somewhere anyways, right? So it's worth a phone call and starting that track of fixing your credit if you are, in a bad spot and need to work on some things. I think another thing that people think is like buying means that they're giving up freedom, then they're like stuck in a place. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think you're actually giving yourself stability. You're giving yourself freedom to be able to change things about a property. You can paint, you're not relying on a landlord to get back to you if something does go wrong. Like you have the ability to fix things and do things yourself right away. So I don't think that, I think it's actually the opposite. And once we talk it through with people, they realize, oh yeah, that actually would be a better situation. So those are the main things that I see.
All right. Those are great. Those are great things, especially the fact that you can buy a house for $1,000. Okay.
I know.
Who couldn't scrape that together if they really put their mind to it?
Absolutely.
Birch is like, meow. What? Let's talk about really break it down. What rent is really costing you? Can you help us break down like the math on what people are actually losing? Let's say over like a 5-year period of like renting versus homeownership.
I love this. This is my favorite part because when I share some numbers with people, this is where people really kind of get blown out of the water. They're like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that math. So I took some notes. Let's just say you're paying $2,000 a month in rent or whatever it is. You're paying $2,000 a month. That's $120,000 over that 5-year period of time that you mentioned. Okay.
Crazy.
With nothing to show for it. You
Right.
just paid your landlord's mortgage, right? You have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
Compare that to owning. So even with a modest home, let's say you bought a $400,000 home, and let's say a pretty conservative, you'd probably agree, appreciation rate of 4% a year.
Mm-hmm.
In 5 years, that's $16,000 a year, by the way, in sheer appreciation that you're just by owning, your value of your home is going up by $16,000 a year. In 5 years, that's $80,000. And the math doesn't stop there. You are also paying down your mortgage. So over the course of that 5-year period of time, even if you put the minimum 3% down, or, you put 3% down, you've paid down your mortgage by $20,000. So 5 years from now, renting, you've paid out $120,000 with nothing to show for it. Owning that $400,000 house 5 years from now, you have $100,000 in equity. You have an asset that's worth, net worth to you is $100,000. And so when I put it in the perspective to people and ask them, that is equivalent to approximately $20,000 a year. What part-time job can you get paid $20,000 a year for doing absolutely nothing except living in the space that you have to live in anyways? And then people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So that's the math, and it adds up to a lot really quick.
Well, and then you have a couple of years like we did during COVID, which, were one-offs where you weren't seeing 4%. You were seeing double-digit appreciation in most parts of the country. So you throw in a couple of years like that, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, crap, I got $50,000 in equity this year instead of my $20,000. You just don't ever know what are those things that happen in the economy that are going to bump that number up even higher.
I have people who literally, by owning a house when they did, completely changed the trajectory of their life because of the equity that they built and what they were able to do with it.
That's amazing. I love that. How does inflation and rising rent play into like the long-term cost of renting?
Yeah, so inflation is it hits renters the hardest, right? Because their landlord's mortgage isn't changing, but their rents continue to go up. So that's one of the biggest fears that I hear when I talk to renters is my rent goes up. My rent's going up again. That's when people call too, right? Like they just got the notification that their rent went up by 20% or whatever. They're like, oh shoot. But when you own a home, you have you're fixing that payment, right? You have that fixed payment now that can't necessarily, it's not going to go up over time. Your taxes and insurance might go up a little bit, but you're like pausing that payment in time. And now that gives you so much more clarity. It gives you the ability to really plan well and budget and really build out a financial plan for your future. When you have what is probably your biggest monthly expense, you know what it's going to be, right? Whereas as rent, you don't know how high that's going to go. So it makes planning really difficult for people.
That's not great, especially if you're renting because you think you're having financial problems. And that just puts you in like a bigger spiral because you're never going to get ahead.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Ugh. What are some of the hidden costs that renters aren't even considering?
The hidden costs renters aren't considering?
Yeah, like mentally, emotionally, financially. Like what are some things they
So I think mentally, I think mentally it's feeling stuck that they, you know what I mean? You're basing everything off somebody else's timeline. I think emotionally, it's really emotional because there's that fear of, is my landlord going to raise my rent? Are they all of a sudden going to up? And I don't know how many people I've talked to that call me and say, my landlord decided to sell the house or sell the building. And now I talked to people
at an open house last night. They literally said that our landlord is selling our house. We don't, the house we're renting, we don't want to buy it. And now we're out looking. I'm like, well, great, buy my listing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously the financial side of it that we've talked about, but also financially, like you're missing out on tax write-offs. You're missing out on like a forced savings with the equity that you're building and paying down your mortgage. So I think there's a lot more hidden costs to renting than there are to than to owning a house for sure.
Mm. Yeah, I can just see you like this is probably totally your jam when you have a buyer walk in, you're a renter walk in that wants to be a buyer. You're like, oh, I got you. Let's talk all about it.
Oh yeah, yes, I think I pride myself on that because and again, people might ask me, oh, 24 years, there are different paths that people take, and as you're a loan officer for so many years, some people just end up working with higher end buyers and they don't work with first time home buyers anymore. I love working with first time home buyers because I think it's a decision that absolutely changes their life, and to be in the position to be able to help someone realize that and take that first step is like one of the best rewarding parts of my job. So I love first time home buyers.
I do too. I don't know that I will ever give up working with first time home buyers. I mean, my book of business has morphed into a lot of higher end buyers too.
Yep.
But like then when my clients send their kids to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so
Yes.
rewarding. And they're the sales when you're at that leave the closing table, you're like, man, that felt so good on my insides. I love it.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Oh, all right. Let's jump into the next section. Like, what wealth are renters actually missing out on? So, like, how does homeownership help people build wealth that renting just simply can't? You talked a little bit about it with them, getting equity. Are there any other ways that shows up?
I feel like homeownership is one of the only ways that an everyday person can build wealth without having like the knowledge of an investor, for example. So if you're simply people I meet that aren't necessarily contributing to a 401k, or they don't have an investment account, or maybe they just don't have a lot of extra money to do that, homeownership is still helping them build wealth by just paying where they have to live anyways, right? So the example we showed of throwing a rent away versus building $100,000 in equity, they never would have had that if they didn't own that house. And there are a lot of people that I talk to that is really their only big savings, right? And so it's a forced savings account that you don't have to think about. You don't have to have extra knowledge about, So I think that's one of the biggest things. And it also can can be such a launch pad for people that, you buy that first house, and sometimes we grow out of that house eventually. And I have some of my favorite clients for people that didn't even know if they wanted to buy a house. And 4 years later, they're leaving that first house, renting it out. So, and then they buy their second house, and all of a sudden, like, they accidentally started to build a real estate portfolio without that plan necessarily, but that's where they ended up. And now they're worth quite a bit more money because that's the path that they took. So that's what I think.
That's awesome. Do you have any other examples of past clients who were maybe really on the fence about jumping into home ownership and like how their lives changed?
Yeah, so we were talking about the pandemic. I had a woman who purchased a house. She was she stands out for a couple reasons because she was so skeptical, right? She was like, I just don't know if this is the right decision. And, you have to be careful with those people. I'm like, hey, I'm here to hold your hand. I promise you're going to be happy that you did this, but you still have to be comfortable with it. And she was fine financially. She put the minimum down payment. And I spoke with her because I do annual check-ins with all of my clients. And I spoke with her, I think it was 4 or 5 years later. And she had built well over $100,000 in equity in that property, and was so crazy excited to tell me that she had just taken out a home equity line of credit to start the business that she'd always dreamt of starting. And there would never have been any other way. Yeah, never had there been any other way for her to do that, aside from taking out a huge bank loan, which she had tried in the past and couldn't get approved for. This gave her that opportunity to, in an affordable way, like really, really go after her dreams. And it was just, like she and I were like both crying on the phone. I'm like, I'm so excited for you. So yeah, I think it is. And it's they call it the American dream, right? And it sounds so cliche, but I have so many stories of clients where taking that first step and buying that house years later, they look back and realize that was the thing that we did that actually really changed where we ended up.
Gosh, that's just like the stuff that I mean, it's like that's the reason why you and I wake up every day. Like seriously,
Oh,
like changing somebody's life like that, and especially if she had already tried other avenues to be able to
mm-hmm,
find money to start her dream and then had gotten
mm-hmm.
shut down, like you made it happen for her. That's the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Let's talk about some like pros and cons of both because
Yeah.
like we had mentioned earlier in the show, buying is not for everyone. So like when
Mm-hmm.
is renting really like could be a good choice?
Yep. I think if you're relocating a lot, I think if you are still building your credit, I think if you have, you're just unsure of your long-term goals and where you want to end up and where you want to be. Those are things like you want to sit on and figure out, right? Because you don't want to get stuck either. And we never want to have somebody get in a house and 6 months later have to move or whatever. I mean, there's options you could rent out and stuff like that. But I think that if you're just still in this period of life where you're figuring some things out and you're not sure where you're going to be, renting might be a better option for you. But as soon as you realize, like I said, that this is where we're at, or we're going to be here for a few years, and you want to be a little bit more stable, go for it. I have so many fun past clients, but I had some past clients who were, I would call them all the time because I'm like, I just need to vicariously live through you for just a little bit because this like would have been something I would have loved to do when I was younger, but they literally got like a small camper van thing and they just like traveled the US for like 2 years. They did this like all over the place. Those people probably, I talked to them in the middle of this trip, right? And I'm like, okay, obviously buying right now is not the right time for you guys. You're all over. I mean,
Yeah.
they were just making ends meet. They would be in an area for a little while and pick up jobs to make some extra money. They were using what funded the trip was a lot of their wedding money. So they used a lot of the wedding money and gifts from
Cool.
parents and stuff
Yeah.
to fund it. But they were doing little odds and ends to make extra money to just like, during a period of life that was perfect, right? No kids, no tie downs, whatever. I'm like, you live it, go do your adventure. And when you get back and you're ready to settle down, let's talk about buying a house. And they did. As soon as they got back, we had to get some jobs. We had to wrap some things up, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Get them ready. But within 6 months, they were house hunting. And now they're stable and so happy, obviously, that they did the adventure when they did. So if you're in a period of life like that, like I think one of the biggest things that I get from people when I talk to them is that they were really scared to make that first call. I don't know. I don't think I'm a scary person. They think like we're going to try to sway them to do something they don't want to do or that they're scared of. And what people actually end up finding out is it's like an eye-opening education conversation where they now feel empowered to make a good decision based on their life. I'm not going to talk you into something one way or another, but I'm just going to educate you on where you're at now, where you have to be in order to buy, what the numbers look like, and then you get to make the decision. And by the end of the conversation, it's usually a pretty clear picture, an answer of like, okay, yeah, actually this makes a lot of sense. I want to do this. It's not a, you need to do this kind of a thing. So even if you're in that space of wanting to live life a little bit and not settle down, it's never too early to have the conversation so that you can plan accordingly.
Like when I'm having buyer consultations, I'm always saying like, let me connect you with a lender. Let's have the lender conversation right away. Because having conversations about money, especially if you have like generational trauma around money or you grew up in a home full of scarcity, I'm like, let's rip that Band-Aid off. And then once you get through that, everything else in the process is going to feel easy. And then you're going to realize that, like what you just said, the lender is not the big, bad, scary person. They're only here to help you and educate you. And then once you have that done, you'll be like, okay, now let's go out and have fun and find a house. And it's never as bad as what people think. But like, I've been in the business for 28 years and I'm always like a little prickly when it comes to be like, ooh, we have to get refinanced. I don't know if I want to talk about my finances with my friend. Like, I don't want to be judged.
Yeah. I think that. And also, I think so many people keep a super close eye on their finances.
Yeah.
And so it's this period of time where they're forced to do it. Like, I'm going to ask you how much money you make. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's also, like I said, people just feel really good about, because so many people, to your point, do come in with like their own money story. And what they get from me anyways is sometimes I help shift that, right? Like, instead of we can't do this or whatever, it's like, wait a minute, how can we do this? And let's start to pay attention to this. And here's some tools that you can use to help you know exactly where you're at. Or here's some tools, especially in this economy, right? Like, I'm not going to say that this is a super affordable housing market, but it's only becoming more unaffordable, right? It's going to get more expensive. And I know people don't like to hear that, but home values are going to continue to go up. Our population of home buyers is going to continue to go up, which means demand is not going anywhere anytime soon. And we already have a lack of inventory. So the good news is you can get in on that equity. Sometimes it's just getting a little bit creative to help you, make it work. So I think that's a big reason people also don't call is maybe they go online and they crunch some numbers on an online calculator and they say, I could never afford that payment. But after a conversation with me and we come up with some creative solutions, it's like, oh, actually, I never would have thought that was a possibility. I talked to a gal the other day who she had ended up, she didn't think she could afford it. From a number standpoint, we could qualify her. We had to have a little reality check, right? Because sometimes people have to okay, we know we want this, but it's a stepping stone. So let's maybe buy this instead. And so she bought a small split level house. She ended up sectioning off the lower level, rented it out, which cut her mortgage payment in half. So she ended up paying less for the house that she owned than she had been paying in rent by quite a bit. And now she's building equity. But it took somebody willing to have the conversation with her to say, I hear you. I see what your budget is, that if you want that payment, it's going to be really hard to buy a house at that payment. But what if we did this? Here are some other options. And then she got excited about it. Like, oh, I could do that. And with the right, I think that's where you would say, right, your power team around you makes all the difference. You have to work with who you work with matters. That's going to help you support you and help you chase your dreams and find what's going to work for you in your budget.
I love that you're a great problem solver. It's so huge. What do you think are some of the risks of buying that people should consider?
I think, honestly, one of the biggest risks of buying is overbuying. Look, you know this, so I don't have to tell you this, but buying a house becomes very emotional for all parties, right? So that's why we have a real conversation before you start looking at houses. And this is why it's so pertinent for so many reasons to talk to your lender before you start house shopping. But one of the questions that I will always ask is, what is your monthly budget payment? What is the maximum that you're comfortable with for a monthly payment? And then because I usually can approve somebody for more than that, because we're looking at gross income. That's not reality. That's not what you take home. That's not what you can pay your bills out with, but that's what we use. So I can qualify you for so much. People are always like, what's the max I can qualify for? Okay, I'll tell you, but we're going to come back to what you told me that comfort payment is, so that when you call me and you start looking at properties that are $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 higher than your budget purchase price range, I can, gently remind you, remember that you wanted your payment here, and now all of a sudden you're going to be here. Have you accounted for that? How are you going to pay for it? So I think that that's honestly one of the biggest risks, is just not paying attention to your budget and getting too emotionally wrapped up in something. And then buying and then realizing nobody wants to be house poor, right? So appropriately planning, so that you really look again, that hard thing of really looking at your numbers and saying, okay, this is how much my bills are. This is how much my maybe not fixed expenses are, groceries, all that kind of thing. Here's some fun money, because we all want to have fun. And then also let's make sure that we're putting something aside in investments or whatever. And now this is realistically what I've got for my house. This is what we've got left for a house payment. And then sticking to that, even if it means buying a little bit less house. That's one of the biggest mistakes or the risks I think that I see.
That's a super insightful way to look at it. Yeah, I mean, I hear all the time. I remember from my mortgage days, I'm like, oh, you're approved for blah, blah, blah. And people would be like, what? And they're like, I don't want to spend that much. I'm like, good.
Yeah.
I don't want you to call me in a couple of years and say like, Beth, we're really strapped. Like this is pushing our comfort zone every month. I don't want that for any of my clients. I didn't want that on the real estate side and the lending side, like none of it like that. I want you to like really love your house and feel comfortable with that payment every single month.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I'll point out is that I can't stress this enough. Who you work with matters. And you and I know in this market right now with discount people or whatever, that's going to be cheaper or whatever. No. It's more important now than ever to work with somebody who absolutely has your best interest at heart. They know what you're looking for, and they are willing to kind of get in your face, especially you as the agent, and say, I don't know if you can say, I don't think this is a good house, but you can say, I really think that we need to point out this, this, and this. These are going to be expenses that are going to come up no matter what, and you need to be aware of them. Someone that's going to make sure that you're pointing that out. We assume, I think, because you and I are just good people, that everybody is like that, but they're not. Like I've worked with buyers that come in and they know me, and then they have somebody they're working with an agent I don't know, and they start to tell me things, and I'm like, no, we don't want to do that. So I think that's the other risk, is just make sure that you're working with somebody that is looking out for your best interests.
Yeah. We could not say that enough on this episode.
That could be a whole episode. There's an idea of that. Whole episode. Horror stories.
Well, let's shift into like making homeownership a reality. What are the first 3 steps someone should take if they're even like thinking about buying, not renting anymore and then becoming a homeowner in the next year?
Yeah. Number 1, talk to a lender. Don't do your calculations online. Just talk to a lender. Give me a call. We'll kind of map out a blueprint for you. You know what I mean? So even if you're not buying for a year, we're going to map out, this is what you have to do. This, because the second thing would be a credit check. So you can check it yourself. Our score is going to be a little bit different than what you pull. Even if you pull a FICO score, ours is still going to be a little bit different, but they'll trend in the same direction. So at least have a ballpark of where you're at. And I love talking to people 6 months, a year ahead, because then they have time to make improvements, right? Or maybe you're a month out, and that's okay too. But the first step is to talk to a lender so that you can know your price range, your numbers, your credit, and all of that, and how much you can save so that you can get there. And then the other thing would be to really look at your finances and make sure that you're setting some money aside. I always recommend like 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund, because stuff comes up, right? When you buy a house, stuff comes up. And so it feels a lot better and like a good decision when you know that you have money set aside for the just in cases. Then you're not like right out the gate, like, oh shoot, this broke or this happened. And now it feels like a money trap. So talk to your lender and start saving.
What are there any specific benchmarks with like credit score, savings, or income that you usually recommend as sort of like that starting point for a client?
Yeah, good question. So credit score wise, I would say, over a 620 is going to, help you with a lot better of an interest rate. If you need down payment assistance, we like to see a 650 or a 660 credit score, because that's going to open up the door to down payment assistance. If you don't need that, then, technically even a 580 or lower we can do, but I'd say 620 should be like the goal score. If you know you need some help with the down payment, then 660 should be your goal score. Savings, like I said, I think if not to use down payment assistance as a first-time home buyer, you're looking at a minimum of a 3 or 3.5% down payment, unless you're a veteran or you're buying on the outskirts of town where the property would qualify for like USDA. Then it's 0 down. You can do 100% financing, but there still are I always put it into buckets for people. There's 3 buckets when it comes to money that you need to buy a house. The bucket number 1 is your down payment, the minimum down payment. Bucket number 2 is the closing costs. Those are lender fees, title fees, appraisal fee. That's the actual cost of doing the loan.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third bucket is, we call it prepaids. And the prepaids is like money we're collecting on your behalf. So if there's, it's a single family house and you need homeowners insurance, we as the lender want to make sure that house is insured for the first year, so that full premium is due at closing. And then we have to start up that escrow account, which is the money that is part of your payment every month that's collected to pay your property taxes and your insurance. Well, they have to start that with a little bit of a cushion. So that's your prepaids. So even, down payment assistance can cover all of that, but it's always good to have, minimum 3% down payment if you want numbers, and then closing costs, figure another 3 or 4% roughly as an estimate to have for closing costs and prepaid set aside.
Yeah. I mean, it's the stuff that people don't think about when they're like, oh, well, I've got my down payment. I'm like, okay, well, you still have like that amount or more that has to pay for closing costs.
Yeah.
Like where was that money going to come from? And they're like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then if you're looking at a $400,000 house and 3%, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
again,
really
the earlier you have that conversation, the more creative ways that we can look at, right? Maybe you have a retirement account. Maybe you have a parent that planned to gift you some money. Maybe you can go in on a house with someone, you know what I mean? There's creative ways, but the sooner you have those conversations, the better, so that you know what to plan for.
Yeah. What programs are out there right now that are great for first-time home buyers?
Yeah. So depending on your income level, because they have income limits, but Home Ready is a conventional product for Fannie Mae. Freddie Mac has one as well. So if you're under the income limit, you could qualify for lower interest rates, lower mortgage insurance premiums. Minnesota Housing has some fantastic down payment assistance programs, which again, you can get in with as little as $1,000 out of pocket. And that works for all programs. So conventional, FHA, USDA, and VA. You can pair with Minnesota Housing. So they have a fantastic programs. They also have income limits. So that's why it's great to talk to your lender so that you know, do I qualify for the deferred interest loan where there's no payment on that down payment assistance money, or maybe there's a payment on it. So that has to be taken into consideration. I think those are two of the best programs. There have been some really great first generation products, but now the two, Minnesota Housing said they're not necessarily replenishing those funds. And the other program that we've used a lot this year just paused. They used the word paused. So we're hoping maybe they replenish those. But if you have a parent that hasn't owned a property, there might be some first generation money as well, grants available.
We just had on one of our listings a family, first generation. They bought a home using that program. So they were probably one of the last ones to get in on that. They closed last month, and so special. And actually the mom and her 18-year-old son bought the house together. I think they needed both their income to qualify. And like the pride, they were just like beaming with pride. Just so special. And our seller was like, we could not be happier selling. And it was a son that had owned his parents' house. He said, we couldn't be happier selling our mom and dad's house to this family who's really just going to like bring it back to life and love it. And I'm like, oh my God, it was one of those closings that everybody's in tears, just like with the joy. And they're
those.
Like, and it happens to be in Carrie's neighborhood. And Carrie's like, you wouldn't believe, like they are shaping that house up. All the neighbors are like, oh my God, somebody's doing something with this house. It's going to be a showstopper when they're done with it. But the pride of home ownership in this family, because they were able to like access that program, was so cool.
That is so cool. I still remember our client. We had a client together, if you remember, that she bought that house.
Yes.
Her son didn't know. I remember it was like the secret. Yeah. I'm doing this on my own. It was such a pride thing for her, and I was so proud of her. But I remember, I still think about that at closing when she was so excited about the space that she had in the house for her grandkids, and that she, do you remember, like she was talking about like, okay, I didn't see what my future held, and now I do, because now she was in a community. She could see what she would be able to do in retirement. And that one, we all, every closing is so special, but then there's those ones over all of the years that like stand out to you that are like just extra, like it was just so life-changing for them. And that was one of them too. So
I know.
fun.
And it was so funny. Even like after the closing, I'm like, have you told your son where you bought a house? Because this client bought a house in further away from her son than he would have liked. And she's like, no, I haven't told him yet. And I'm like, oh my God, because I was just waiting to get a call from him being like, why did you sell my mom house here? And he never did. In fact, now he referred his dad to me. So like, okay, he must have been happy with everything too.
Yeah,
and she loves
I'm
her
sure
house.
he was super excited for her after it was all said and done.
Yeah, she loves her place, and she's on a lake, and it's just is perfect. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the show about like one of the biggest myths. Geez, Louise, Beth, try to say that twice. About putting 20% down. What are other big myths out there that we can bust for buyers?
I think a big myth is that it's just this really difficult process.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to know about the process, right? There's a lot of new terminology, especially on the loan side. But with the right team, we hold your hand, we take it step by step. It's not something that necessarily happens overnight. So it's just, you have to take step one, just like doing anything scary, right? Like take step one, figure it out, know what your numbers are, know what that would look like. And then, look at your financing and say, okay, I can do this. And then step two, I'll admit, I tell everybody I am by far the least fun part of this transaction. I love what I do. You know me. I'm totally a numbers nerd, but I always am envious of my realtor partners because I'm like, you guys really have the fun part of this job. Not that it's easy. You have some hard stuff you do too, for sure. But and then you get to do the fun part and actually get out and start looking at some houses. So it's not as scary as it seems. You just have to take it step by step. I think that's one of the biggest myths is that it's a difficult process because I think, and rightfully so, I think so many people have heard absolute horror stories. And unfortunately, as you and I talked, there are people out there in this industry that don't do us any justice because I had a closing a couple months ago. They used down payment assistance. He called me, the realtor actually recommended he had a conversation with me. And she kind of felt bad because he had been talking to this other lender for like a year. So I think the lender had given him some credit advice or whatever, but then literally just shoved him to the wall. Like, here's a price range, go look at houses. And he called me because he just was so unsure of his numbers. And that was one of those conversations. 30 minutes later, he was like, I learned more from you in the last 30 minutes than I did from that lender, talking to them multiple times over the course of a year. I feel really good about my numbers. We adjusted his price range because he actually wasn't qualified for what they had told him. And we also discovered I'm like, did they tell you like how much money you're going to need to close on this? And he was like, no. And when I told him, he was like, I don't have that money. Okay, let's pivot. And now we need down payment assistance. And now this is what this looks like, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if you think it's scary, or you maybe had a conversation with someone and thought, I didn't get any information about that, or I'm just as clueless as I was before, or you're still feeling like you need to do more research. When you're working with the right lender and realtor partner team, you shouldn't feel like you have to do more research. They should be providing above and beyond information that you feel so well informed that you're like, okay, I got this. And you can feel really confident because we are helping you purchase the biggest asset, but also I'm putting you in the biggest debt you're ever going to be in. Like, we want you to feel confident about it. And if you're not, then you're not working with the right people.
Yeah, 1,000%. I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be like Jen's hot take. What's one thing you wish every renter knew?
I wish every renter knew how much wealth they were missing out on by throwing their money away renting. And that I wish that they knew that if they just looked at the numbers and had a conversation with someone like myself to show them how much they could actually build in wealth by owning real estate, that it would be completely eye-opening to them. Because I think so many renters are just completely oblivious to it. And why wouldn't they be, right? Unless you've talked to someone or really looked at the numbers, or you follow certain people like Dave Ramsey who say you shouldn't buy a house unless you have 20% down, you shouldn't ever go in debt. Why would they even take that step to having that conversation? So I wish more renters knew that home ownership and owning real estate, hey, most of the most wealthy people in the world, their biggest source of wealth is real estate. So if that says something, right? And I just want renters to know that by owning real estate, it truly can be life-changing as to your net worth and where you can go in life. And so it's at least worth the conversation.
What's the biggest aha moment your clients have had when they buy their first home?
Oh, that's a good one. I think, honestly, like how good it feels. I think they know it's going to feel good, but I think that when I'm at the closing table and people, like so many first-time home buyers are like, because I ask them, like, how did this transaction go? And you know us, like we're always about, we want to give everybody a 5-star plus experience. And so how did it all go? And they're like, it was easier than I thought. And this feels amazing. Like you said, so many people are like almost in tears at the closing table. Like they did it, like they bought a house. And again, cliche, the dream of home ownership, right? But it really is. It's that aha, like, oh my gosh, they get handed the keys and they're like, it's mine. Like I own that house. Yeah. They're so excited about it. I just think that's the biggest thing, is like, it's easier than they thought it would be. And they're just super excited to go live there.
That's how I felt when I bought my house. I know that feeling. It's awesome. What advice would you give someone who feels stuck or scared about like getting out of the renter rat race?
Yeah. Just start small. Like there's no hurry, right? I think the advice would be that what I find is some of the people, there's like different categories of renters, right? That like are really, they love rent. Some people love renting because it's like an apartment building and there's people around and there's fun things to do. And they fear that they're going to lose that like social aspect sometimes of renting. What they don't realize is there's amazing condo properties with a ton of great facilities and, you know, things that they can make friends, and you like, at least you still own a piece of that real estate. So if you're one of those people and you fear it's like going to really like put a damper on your lifestyle, it's still worth a conversation. There's really fun neighborhoods that we can introduce you to. My neighbors are some of my best friends. You know what I mean? So I think there's that. And I think also for the people that are, it's more about that money story, and they just don't want, like, they're comfortable. They don't want to take the time to like dig deep into their financing. I will tell those people, it might seem scary, but after a conversation, all of those people that were super, super scared were feeling so much more empowered after what we talked about, because I give tools, and then they feel like, actually, I can take control of my money now, because I know I just write mortgages, but I'm so passionate about helping people with their money story and understanding their money and making a plan on how they can build wealth, that they have that scary conversation. And it's just a little step at a time that can completely change their direction and their mindset. And so I think it's just worth a conversation.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, we've got a couple of action items. So if this conversation got your wheels turning, just don't sit there just overanalyzing this. Like, reach out to me, reach out to Jen and let's figure out, you're probably closer to this than you think. But Jen, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram most actively at Jennifer Butcher Mortgage. I post a lot of educational content. So by all means, please follow me there and learn. And then you can DM me there, or I'm sure Beth will put in the show notes my contact information, email, phone number. Again, I want to stress to people who are maybe afraid of like, I don't want my credit pulled, there are so many people that I've sent. I do a mortgage options report for every client that I talk to that shows a price range. It shows the payment breakdown. It shows how much money they would need, like literally everything that you would want from a number standpoint in one spot. I can do that without even pulling credit. We have the ability to do a soft pull on credit if you want to see where you're at and get free advice on what you could do to improve your credit. I can do that. And that's like that first step, right? It makes it less scary. You're not like, there's not some big commitment. We don't charge any fees up front, including for a credit report. So there's no cost to just have a consult with me. And I guarantee that you're going to have a clear, better picture after it. And then you'll know, hey, and I might be the first to say, I think renting's better for you for this period of time. Or, you know what I mean? You'll at least have a game plan.
So powerful. And the education stuff you put out on social media is awesome. So go find Jen on Instagram. If you're still renting, that's fine, but do it intentionally, not because you're afraid or because you're uninformed. I feel like that's super powerful. And then go and you said, don't use the rent calculator. But like, I feel like running a scenario of like rent versus mortgage. And I know that you would absolutely do this in a consultation. Like, I feel like that can be a really powerful exercise and realize like, okay, man, I really need to get off my ass and stop paying my landlord's mortgage and start paying my own.
For sure.
Well, Jen, thank you for this conversation today. You are always so full of great education and insight, and I love how you are so passionate about educating everyone that you cross paths with about how to really make their money work for them. And I mean, it was a good one. So thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me again. I always love chatting with you.
All right, bus bench babes. Until next time, keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babes that you are.
Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.